Thank you for having us, Daniel. Tonight we are very fortunate to spend a few moments with Daniel. Actually, back a few months ago, we asked the alumni here in Canada whom they would like to hear about and which people they would like to hear from. And your name came up, Daniel, a number of times. And I think you
That's the last one they wanted to hear.
You have, I think, inspired a number of alumni across the generations, and they were very curious to hear more about you. So what we decided to do is to start some interviews of alumni, and starting with you, Daniel. So thank you for accepting to be the first one in this series of interviews we're going to start having. We will video record the interview, and it will allow alumni who are from other chapters to follow it and to listen to it. It will be posted on our website. So alumni from Vancouver, from Calgary, from Ottawa or Toronto, and those who could not make it today will be able to listen to the interview. So in a nutshell, for those who don't know Daniel, Daniel is the CEO of the NA Capital, and we'll hear about it in a few moments. Daniel is from Montreal and is an alumni from 1981. So my first question to you, Daniel, logically is to ask you, why INSEAD? What made you choose INSEAD at that time over any other North American business schools?
Well, first, I'm delighted to be here today and to welcome all of you to the NA Capital. And we have a few alumni of DNA, namely Philippe Castonguay, my partner, and Alexis Labrecque, also my co-founder partner at DNA. And we have also our friends from Roland Berger, where we have also another INSEAD alumni. So it's great to have all of you here. Well, INSEAD, so 1981, I'm 25 years old. I'm a chartered accountant. I've just studied at night, 2 years, 3 courses, 3 hours per night. So, and I'm saying, well, after 3 years of working at RCMP, which is not the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, it's Raymond Chabot, Martin Perry, known as Raymond Chabot Grant Thornton today. I think to myself, well, I want to do an MBA. And back when I was attaché C, because in those days, that's the way you could gather information. I would go at the library and look at the rack where they had all the brochures on MBAs. And I'd looked at Harvard, Wharton, and INSEAD, someplace INSEAD. That intrigued me. And I had spoken to a few alumni who had been there. I'd met Audrey Pisson at the time and others. And I even cold called Robert Bourassa, because Robert Bourassa in 1976 was actually was almost boosted from Quebec. Even his friends in 1976, would speak to him. So poor Robert Bourassa went to Louvain, to INSEAD, to teach. So I called him up in 1980 and say, Monsieur Bourassa, j'aimerais vraiment vous parler, connaître votre expérience. And so it's by, in those days, you didn't have your tablet and go, it's so efficient today. So, and I said, well, here's an occasion to go to Europe. And I love Europe. I didn't know much about Europe, but I spent my 5 weeks of honeymoon in Europe. And I said I could study there and discover something new. It's a 1-year MBA, which was kind of cool because 2 years was a big commitment. And I thought, based on my discussions with alumni, that this was really special, the international aspect of it. And interestingly, when you look at today, what it was back then, 38 years ago, are still 3 criteria that are very important for alumni. This European culture, now Asian culture, but international in its spirit. In those days, you could not have a country with more than 10%, from one country. Today, it's the same rule applies. So they were really visionary when they established that, and we understand why it's so important to be in in a minority when you want to open up your perspective. So that was INSEAD, and the taste for adventure. This was a $25,000 deal. All in all, today it's probably a $125,000 deal, more or less.
More, yeah.
Even more, 150 maybe, but everything being relative, it was the same thing. And I really had $1,000 in my pocket. So, but I figured out a way to borrow from INSEAD and sold my car and my son says, when you think of it, that's probably what makes somebody go outside of the border. You need to believe in it and take everything that you can, the tools to do it. So, and even today, I remain committed and still involved.
So, in perspective, other than you had your empty pockets when you left INSEAD, and how did it impact your life path, your career?
Well, it had a very big impact, and one doesn't realize it so much, for the first few years. Especially because I came back to Canada. I was hired by the Royal Bank, and I was sent to Montreal for a 2-year stage. I was supposed to be sent back to Paris, but that was graduated in 81. 82, there was a big crisis. People remember 82 as one of the great Bordeaux years, but it was, from an economic standpoint, it was a tough, very tough year. So they folded all the international postings. So I was effectively working in the Royal Bank and stuck in Canada, so to speak, because I wanted to have the experience abroad. But for 10 years, I remained, more local. So I had friends. I stayed connected. I met with my good friend Rajal, who arrived in '88. We got to meet each other, and I was a volunteer with the association and became president, and I helped the Fondation also, which was providing scholarships to INSEAD students. So, and this was a great network. It's always been like that. But then when I really joined, I ended up at the National Bank, because through the Mercantile Bank, I moved to the Mercantile Bank. Then the Mercantile Bank was purchased by the National Bank. The National Bank purchased Labrecque Beaubien, so I ended up going to the investment bank. So I was not changing job, it was my employer was changing. But I really ended up in investment banking without knowing that I would go there. But what INSEAD did to me was it opened my perspective. First of all, when you go to INSEAD, you're open to do anything else after, really. You're going to meet people, you're going to see situations. You don't know whether you're going to go back to your country or work elsewhere. And to me, it opened the door to banking, which I didn't know anything about banking, let alone investment banking. So it's from one thing to the next, from one relationship to the next, that finally you build, this career. And but so first 10 years not too relevant business-wise, but once I joined, the international investment banks like Schroders, Lazard, and Rothschild, it was extremely useful because I was traveling a lot. I was meeting a lot of people, and then a lot of the alumni who I did not keep contact with, were working in corporations, in investment banks. So it was a fabulous. It is the most powerful network in the world for someone who works internationally. If you decide to work only, say, in the United States, well, you go to Harvard, you're going to have, a wonderful network. But if you want to work on the continents, it's fabulous. I met recently, just by way of anecdote, because I became president of the International Alumni Association, which was made of 45,000 alumni around the world, or maybe 50,000 now. But in South America, there was a man called Cyril Ramaphosa, who was the chairman of the National Council, who I had met because, it was part of my role. Well, he became the president of South Africa. And when, I think it was elected like a year and a half ago, and I got, as you know, member of the board, I got an email, so who knows Cyril Ramaphosa? And I said, I know him, I've met him. So you get, you know, to develop a wonderful network.
So you mentioned your years in banking. Tell us more about these years you spent in banking, and especially maybe the years you had with the National Bank. What have been your...
Well, National Bank was, I was at the National Bank only for 2 years, really. And I started their M&A practice. They didn't have any M&A group. So for me, National Bank was more Labrecque, which was a fantastic opportunity to really learn about the business. Philippe was in investment banking as well at DS, if I'm not forgetting. McLeod Young Weir. And you know, it was a really cool industry for me. You know, an industry which you know is very special, very arrogant in its way of dealing, you know, with one another, and very greedy. You know, greed is an important ingredient of investment banking. Very hardworking, dog. It's a rough environment. You know, you know, when you lose, or you know, you're not afraid to speak your mind, and you know, we would call clients. What do you mean you don't put me on the cover sheet? We've done all this for you. It's a fascinating industry. Oh, you want to come and join us? So just take off your coat, have a drink. Yes, I know that Labrecque, I learned investment banking, capital markets, and so on. And that led me to go to Schroders. And this is where Philippe and I became partners at the time. Philippe's father was the chairman of the Canadian Fondation, who taught me everything that has to be known to become a secretary of a corporation. And that was thanks to his dad. And that was a lot of fun. We started from scratch and built a team of 6-7 people. And we had nice successes. We did the Canadian National Railway IPO, the acquisition of Illinois Central, worked on digitalization of Manulife as a co-manager, all sorts of international, everything had to do with cross-border deals, which was, so that was our, you know, our special niche, if you will. And then, you know, INSEAD was very, very relevant because we always talk to our people in New York, London, Paris, Asia.
So after all these, you know, interesting years of building up your expertise and eventually moving to investment banking, one day you wake up and you come up with this idea to launch your own business. Tell us more. What was the trigger and how did it start?
The way it happened, if you recall, 2008. Don't recall whether the border was good, but I can tell that, you know, banking was really bad. 2008, there was nothing good about being in investment banking or banking. You know, Lehman Brothers and stuff. So everything was falling apart. So 2008 was a no bonus year. 2009 was a no bonus year. I was looking at it and said, you know what, this is probably a time to, I was 53 at the time, to do something else. And so I left Rothschild in May, and I had my bucket list of things I wanted to do: cycle, work with the guitar, and do everything. Not traveling, because I was, the last year I traveled 51 weeks out of 52, so traveling was not on my bucket list, but a lot of things. And then a former client called me, Pierre Marcouillet at Camoplast, 2 weeks after I left, and said, Daniel, I've got this acquisition in Sri Lanka, 5,000 employees, 8 plants, could you help me do it? I couldn't say that I was too busy. And I said to myself, you know what, maybe, why not? You know, I'll do this, and I'll be able to do this, you know, part-time here and there, and I'll go to Sri Lanka to look at the business. So I took this first mandate. And from that first mandate, the second one came in, and the third one. And Alexi 2 months after I started, said, well, I'd love to learn about investment banking. And you're going to need to have a corporation and do all that. So yeah, sure, go over it. I'd love to. And investment banking is not a family thing per se. It's a professional business. It's not like having a manufacturing company where you can have generations taking it. But I said, why not? Let's start it and we'll see where it goes. So it really went un peu par accident in a way. And after a year, the mandates were there. I said, you know what? We're in business. Alexi, we're in business. Let's ask for our exit market dealer license. And then I called up Philippe, or he called me. I don't recall how it happened, but from one thing to the next, we were in business, enjoying what we were doing. And I realized that I really like executing deals. When I was with the large corporation, I was spending 60% of my time managing, producing reports to New York and London and what have you, and less on execution also because we had a lot of our expertise which was abroad, and we left execution to the sector expert. Whereas here now, Philippe, we do 90% of our time is spent on execution with clients, and we work with entrepreneurs, and that's I kind of rediscovered the fabric of the business in the province of Quebec. Like the small and mid-sized companies, I didn't know them. All my contacts were in Calgary, that I visited every month, and in Toronto, and Vancouver. I didn't know the fabric, and I discovered all those businesses and saw, how much entrepreneurship there is, how much money the entrepreneurs are making in this province. It's amazing. There's never been so much wealth created than in the last 10 years. And so that's exciting, and we do a lot of different things. And
some of the most memorable deals you have done in the last 10 years, those who really stick to your mind and things you can share with us.
There's a saying that goes, you like to talk about your rich uncle, not the poor uncle. Well, I'll tell you about my rich uncle and my poor uncle. So starting with my rich uncle, I think the first deal I did, which is Camoplast. So Camoplast manufactures off-road tires and the ski-doos, the snowmobiles, tracks. And so this business, it was a merger of equal when they purchased the company in Sri Lanka, and the business was sold to Michelin. I think the closing is not done yet, but they announced it for roughly $2 billion in enterprise value. And at the time, the enterprise value of two businesses together was about $500 million. So to me, to help to be one of the players or contributors that permitted to create a company like this is, gives a lot of satisfaction. It's very rewarding. And even Pierre Marcouillet, who's also become a friend, he tells me that, I really had I won't say, he says a big influence in front of my friends, but let's say an influence or an impact. But, it's, whether it's small or big, it's an impact because this deal could have, fallen flat on the floor a few times, and so that's a lot of fun, and you feel that you contribute. And it's more fun in investment banking to be on the buy side than the sell side. So that was the buy side you build, but the buy side is not as lucrative because you have a lot of failure. On the sell side, more or less 80% of your mandates will happen and you'll get paid. But so you try to keep a balance. But I don't know why in DNA we have mostly buy sides, and which is a tribute to the fact that you contribute value, because people don't like to pay on the buy side. When you sell a business, you get a big check, so it's easy to pay a big amount to investment bankers. On the buy side, you pay for the acquisition, plus you pay for your bankers. But anyway, that's what we do. And at Rothschild, it was the same kind of reality. Now, deals that didn't go well, and I'll tell you about the deal that I still regret that it didn't go through, because that then I think Alexis was probably the second deal that we signed, which was with SNC-Lavalin. So we pitched against Rothschild and Goldman Sachs, and we won the mandate to advise them on the purchase of 10% of Highway 407. And so they gave us a great, it was fantastic, and we were so proud. Like it is, always success only, no fees unless something happens. And the success would have been the biggest fee that I would have ever done, not share, because that, we were only 3 at the time, so you don't have a lot of amount to feed. And after 8 months of work, the deal, fell apart. We tried to do an IPO, didn't work. And so that was, when I heard, when I went on the roadshow, I said to Alexis, prepare the invoice because I'm going to the roadshow. I'll be in Chicago, New York, London, so, and after 2 weeks of roadshows, the pricing was wrong. The buyers did not want to. We didn't get one single order, and we had a big syndicate led by 2 large investment banks in Canada. And normally, 9 times out of 10, the deal goes through. So anyway, the deal didn't go through. So it took me, in investment banking, you have a lot of deception. That's part, you have to be used to this, of deals that don't work and deals, that make or break a year.
I was about to ask you, in fact, what you found the most challenging in the past 10 years and what kept you awake at night.
Well, the most challenging, I think, is to find. We're the largest M&A boutique in Montreal, but we're squeezed between 6 big banks, which form an oligopoly, which lend to clients, which provide all sorts of financial products, speak to client every day. And then the chartered accountant firms, the big 4, that have also a terrific relationship with their clients because they do their audit, they do their tax, they do everything. And we're in the middle to try and win our spots. So competition is extremely, extremely tough. So when we win something, we're proud of it, but that's why you don't have too many boutiques. If you go around town, you won't see many people do this, so that's tough. What keeps me awake at night, I think I can count on my fingers the number of nights that I didn't sleep because of business. I have this way of switching on and off, which has been working well, fortunately, because that's probably the challenge, to balance one's life. I can say what I found really tough lately is how to deal with the Y and the Z generation. When we took a job when we were 23, 22, we took a job for at least 3 years. Today, the new generation, I don't know if you guys experience the same thing, but they take a job for the next 6 months, and they'll see if they renew in their own mind, and then they go somewhere else, and you ask them, well, what's your path? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Where do you want to go? I don't know. I know where I'm. Not important. This is not irrelevant question. Okay. All right. Well, so that I find tough, to.
So talking about this new generation, that leads me to ask you, how do you see your industry evolving, and what are the new trends you see that impact your industry, impact investment banking?
Our industry, I think until 2008, was an industry where a lot of the younger managers wanted to work. At the MBAs and universities, there was also a big proportion of alumni would come, or graduates would come to investment banking, and more than to consulting. Today is totally different. Investment banking has lost its luster, I think. Young graduates are not willing to do the sacrifice that are required in our industry. The values also that have been conveyed through the period of 2008 are just values that don't match with their own values. And I think they're right. Investment banking is an industry which is made, as I said, the greed and people not being respectful for one's life, in general. Like, I always thought it was silly to ask two younger, talents who work until 3 o'clock at night, when the next morning the manager comes and doesn't even take the book that was prepared, or it's not like just putting hours for putting hours, and I think it's just wrong. So our industry has not managed well its image, and also the management of its resources. So but it's still an industry that is important for the velocity of finance, the velocity of business. It's where ideas are being brought up, and where the connection between savings, money, and projects and entrepreneurs is being connected. It's not going to be replaced totally by the electronic devices, because business is still run by human beings until for a few years. So I think for younger professionals who want to put the hours and the efforts, I think it's a wonderful. But you need to do more than 6 months, which happened here this summer.
So that's the advice you would give them?
Well, at least do 2 or 3 years. If you come, it's a window. Investment banking is a window in the world, but you need to at least put the time to do at least a period of 3 years as an analyst to get the benefit of it, and then after you decide for yourself if that's meant for you or not.
We haven't touched upon artificial intelligence. I was at Forum of INSEAD last week on artificial intelligence, and I got the presentation of a consultant who was presenting, I think it was Accenture. They were presenting a new generation of consultants. And I'm kind of curious to hear about your side of the equation on investment banking. Are there a number of tasks that you foresee you would have in the near future? Artificial intelligence deal with it?
Well, this is a question we often discuss internally, because we're small, agile, we can move quickly, but we haven't yet figured out what we could do with our clients, apart from the work, the analysis we do, and all of that is much quicker, much more efficient. But by and large, our industry has not transformed itself as much as other industries, which are totally. When you look at robotization in the manufacturing sector, it's totally where you had 500 people, you have now 20 people just managing. Our industry, you still have, let's take Canada, you still have 6 big banks. You still have in each of the big banks institutional salesmen. They all have a team of institutional salesmen. They all call the same buyers. When there's a public issue, a flotation of stock, they call the Caisse de dépôt, MERS, teachers, CPP, EMCO. They all call the same. Can you imagine this? So, you have like 6 person calling, saying, okay, there's a new flotation of, say, Bell bond. They all call the same with no added value, no distinction, but it's still working like that. And it's amazing. And then you have the institutional salesman, you have the investment bankers preparing the deal, you have the research, and again, the research. All the banks have a research analyst covering, say, telecommunication. They all listen at the same quarterly call, and they all write the same platitude on the research. So, like, I can show you 20 research reports. No, they're all the same.